tell you her exact title. She's the managing community organizer of the Women's Medical Fund in Pennsylvania. Please welcome Seneca Joyner! You take this. You take this. Or you take that.
I'll take that.
I'll take this. And we're here. All right. I need it. Thank you. Take a seat. You got a stool. Bring it up.
I might not be tall enough. Woo.
Really?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh my
I
gosh.
did it.
You're great.
Ben Carson was right.
Oh my God. Okay, so we are going to talk. It's Black History Month, and so often the movement in whether you're talking about abortion rights, whether you're talking about reproductive health, whether you're talking about all of it, Black women are running it and should be centered and are centered and doing the work. And so we wanted to talk about, first of all, a little bit about what the Women's Medical Fund does, and then we'll dive into talking about reproductive justice and what that means and what the difference is between reproductive rights and health and all that good stuff. So, first, tell folks a little bit about what you do in Philly, what you do in Pennsylvania, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Liz said, I am the manager of community organizing at Women's Medical Fund. Women's Medical Fund is the nation's largest and oldest abortion fund. I also like to say we are the tallest and the prettiest abortion fund in the United States. People always laugh at that. I don't know why. I seem very tall and pretty, so they should be on board. But 35 years ago this year, a group of concerned citizens got together and they said, this Hyde Amendment, this federal ban on using public insurance to pay for abortions, that'll probably be struck down by the Supreme Court any day now. And in the meantime, just to cover our bases, just to acknowledge that this is the largest, poorest city in the United States, we're going to get some money together and we're just going to pay for people's procedures because for sure, this will be taken care of. And then, of course, 35 years later, the abortion bans are deep and wide all across Pennsylvania, all across the nation. Texas just in their legislature also instituted a private insurance ban. So you couldn't use public, and now you can't use your private insurance to pay for abortion in Texas because everything's great.
Yeah.
So for 35 years, we've been doing that. We've been paying for people's procedures. And I am tasked since May of last year, I am tasked with organizing the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania so that not only people can get their abortions paid for, but that we can consistently be holding those in power to task for keeping our abortions from us. So That's my job.
That is a good job.
Yeah.
I believe that deserves a round of applause.
Thank you. It hasn't been a long time. There's not been many Black people in my position, so that's also a kind of big deal. Yeah. It was very much a white women only thing, and so I think I'm the second person in my position to hold this job, and thankfully I have to say WMF has consistently hired Black women and femmes to do this work. So let's hear for that.
You covered a little bit about why abortion funds have to exist between the Hyde Amendment, which is everybody familiar with the Hyde Amendment, the federal ban on funding abortion, been around since 1979, I think. No,
73.
76.
76.
76. And it's something that could be voted on and they don't have it anymore. It comes up for a vote every year.
Every year.
And every year,
enthusiastic bipartisan support.
Enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden was the biggest supporter of Democrats. Yeah. Garbage. So, I'm just saying garbage all the way down. It's like, I don't know. It's too much. So talk a little bit about the people that you serve. I mean, it's astounding. I think people forget, and you reminded me of it the last time we had a conversation very similar to this in Philly during a conference that we were doing. And when you said that Philly is the largest and poorest city.
Yeah.
That was, I guess I was taken aback by that because I was completely gobsmacked by that statement. So tell me a little bit about the people that you serve, how often, and how you fund them.
Yeah, so we talk to about 4,000 people every year. So Women's Medical Fund, there's so much about our funding model that is revolutionary, that is liberatory, which I won't bore you with now, but if you guys want to talk to me about it later, I can say. But so we serve Philadelphia and the 5 counties. One of the best things about our model is that if you are going to an abortion clinic that we work with, we will give you money to pay for your procedure. We don't ask people to submit any documentation. They call us up on our helpline, which is staffed 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, and we ask them how far along they are, where they're going, and we ask them what money, if any, they have to put toward their procedure. On average, a regular schmegular abortion, and I'm sure for most of you guys, the idea that there are regular schmegular abortions is probably really new to you, but your average run-of-the-mill, 15 minutes and you're done, abortion costs between $450 and $500. Most people don't have that money laying around to pay for an out-of-pocket medical procedure, and I would say that our average pledge to the folks calling our helpline is $130. And what we always like to remind people of the 4,000 people that we talk to every year, or the 4,000 people we talked to last year, more than 3,300 of them took that pledge, they had their procedures. But we did an estimate, and at least 2,000 more people, despite the help that we were able to give them, despite all of the practical and financial support that's out there, were never able to get their appointments. And so they were actually forced to carry their pregnancies to term. And that is both astounding and not surprising for Philadelphia. Like Liz said, we are the largest, poorest city in America. The vast majority of people who call our helpline live in deep poverty. So that means these are folks who make on average about $8,000 a year. And I say make, but I don't think that means, it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. But yeah, the vast majority of the people who call our helpline are Black, they're already parenting, they are unemployed or underemployed, and they just want to get this incredibly safe, extremely minor medical procedure to help them transform their lives, live their lives, care for their children, care for their families, go to work, all the things that regular people deserve to do, but our government and the people who love our government and white supremacy think poor people and people who get pregnant shouldn't be allowed to do any of those things. No joy, no decision-making abilities. And so Women's Medical Fund is wonderful because we focus on people who live at the intersection of those horrible, horribly violent places of being too poor to afford health care, and also being someone with the capacity to get pregnant, which is a special hell that our government just really focuses a lot of its ire on. So.
Well, and I just want to mention briefly, after laying out who is needing abortions, a lot of folks don't know that on March 4th, the Supreme Court is hearing a case that is focusing on the question of whether or not a clinic has standing to sue on behalf of their patients to challenge all of these laws, which is every case ever. And if the Supreme Court decides that a clinic doesn't have the right to sue, that would force these very people that Seneca was talking about and people that we know would have to be the plaintiffs in their own case to challenge these abortion laws. Now, what does that mean? It means that people with no means, people would have to be stigmatized to come forward and challenge the law and go through a court system, would have to be the ones challenging these laws. And let's just do the math on that. It takes about 3 years to get a case through the Supreme Court. Pregnancy takes how long, everybody?
40 weeks.
Exactly.
It's 10 months, actually.
That literally means that no one would ever be able to access care. And it also means that all these laws that you've been reading about throughout the course of the year that are in limbo, sitting, being challenged by the courts, would immediately go into effect.
Absolutely.
And folks don't even know that. And so think about putting that forth. It's like, it's so shocking to me.
We're suing the Commonwealth. We're party to a lawsuit with ACLU of Pennsylvania and the Women's Centers, which is an independent service provider. And I just want to say this. Planned Parenthood has been around for a really long time, but the vast majority of abortions are being performed by independent providers at independent clinics all over this country. And it's really, really important to identify that, because Planned Parenthood has more money than CREASIS, and oftentimes people forget about the work of independent providers. We work really closely with the Women's Centers. We're party to a lawsuit suing the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania because, like in 42 other states, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania also bars our public version of Medicaid. You also can't purchase insurance through the Affordable Care Act exchange that will cover your abortion. And so I think
you have to get a side.
You have to. What do they call that? It's not a rider. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's a rider.
It's a rider. And so one of the things that we find out that even if people have health insurance that covers or would otherwise cover abortion, most people find out at the last minute that actually in Pennsylvania, unless they've purchased this separate rider, which is hundreds of extra dollars a month, they won't be able to get their abortion covered. But we've been suing the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for years now, right? We are a beautiful, tall abortion fund, and we are partnering with one of the most beautiful and tallest, collection of lawyers on the planet, ACLU of Pennsylvania. And I think a couple of weeks ago, all of the Republican senators said, we would like to be a party to this lawsuit because it is our rights, it is the interest of us, we men, that is important when denying health care to poor pregnant and parenting people. And so it is just, when people talk about political theater, it is this, because one of the biggest obstacles that we find in Pennsylvania is that there's a 24-hour waiting period. I'm sure most of you guys have heard about that. So in most states, there's a 24-hour waiting period that people who are pregnant are not trusted to make important decisions about their life. They have to go through this really patronizing, completely inaccurate and dehumanizing counseling session. So they have to make 2 appointments. If someone is under the age of 18, they also have to get parental consent if they don't have their parents with them. And one of the things that we always say and that people often note is that the state trusts you to have the baby, but they don't trust you to terminate the pregnancy. They say, well, you can't be relied upon. You're only 14, 15, 16, 17. You can parent, but you can't make this horrible, serious choice. And then, of course, there are the insurance bans that just create obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after dehumanizing obstacle in front of people. And in the meantime, the courts are clogged and they kick things up to this circuit and then that circuit and the Supreme Court, which is packed with monsters. We don't have time. One of the things that we also always talk about is that almost every state in the union has a gestational limit. In Pennsylvania, it's 24 weeks. And so it's not even 10 months that people have to make this decision. Most people find out around week 4, 5, 6 that they are pregnant. Most people terminate their pregnancies before the end of week 8. The fact that it can take years and years for some set of people who don't really care about your life or your dreams or your hopes to make decisions about you is an outrage. It is an outrage. And so like Liz said, like we all say, abortion is about a particular kind of freedom that is at the center of all liberation movements. I feel it sincerely. I've had 2 abortions. As I always tell people, I loved both of them. I loved my second one because it happened after I had my son, and there's something, it was like the abortion hits different when you're parenting, because you're just like, oh yeah, no, definitely. I 100% want to terminate this pregnancy. I love my son, he's a Scorpio, he's great. But that,
and he's 12.
He's 12 and we're all just getting through it. But that if you've never been in a position where you absolutely needed, and we talk about this being transformative, life-saving, simple as fuck medical procedure, where people want to hem and haw, where they say we want to take, you have to think about this, 24 hours. When people decide, they've already decided. And so all of the things that we talk about all the time, they're not just costly obstructions, they're extremely effective ways to stop people from getting their abortions. And like we said, we just sort of did a really statistically accurate survey of Philadelphia and the 5 counties, and every year, at least 2,000 people, which is just, that's 2,000 too many people, People should not have to be pregnant when they don't want to be, which is a wild position to take. I've been at some conferences.
That is some fucked up shit.
We're like,
I
don't know. Wow. So everything's great. We're doing great.
Yeah, things are great. So I want to pivot to, in having conversations around abortion, I think we talk a lot about abortion rights, we talk about reproductive rights, we talk about reproductive health, and then they all fall under this blanket of reproductive justice. And so I wanted to, Abortion Access Front is a reproductive rights organization that focuses on about abortion access through a reproductive justice lens. And I want you to walk through, folks, because I think people will bandy about the phrase reproductive justice and use it sort of as a replacement or as the same thing as, and it really isn't. And I got it. That's okay. I'm good. Explain reproductive justice.
Yeah. So, and also in the interest of transparency, WMF is also technically not a reproductive justice organization. We are a racial and economic justice organization that does our work through a reproductive justice lens. And as you said, Liz, that's because reproductive justice actually means something. For those who don't know, it has a very recent history. Reproductive justice was a framework that was pulled together by Black and non-Black women of color in the late 90s, so 20th century liberation movement, stand up, yay! And it was specifically in response to what at that point had been almost 200 years of white supremacist neglect of Black and Indigenous and Asian women, not only in the reproductive justice, in the women's liberation movements, but also by the end of the 20th century, many people had noticed that white supremacy was awful and needed to be dealt with whole and in mass. And one of the biggest charges about white Western feminism was that it just didn't want to deal with that, right? It said votes for women, but absolutely not Black people. We are absolutely going to keep genociding all over the place. And so one of the most important...
I like the term genociding all over the place.
Genociding all over the place.
We're just going to genocide up this place.
So, yeah, I'm from Western Mass, and there's a lot of that. Yeah, there's a lot of that up there and everywhere. Doing it all the time. That they didn't want to confront that. They hadn't been confronting it, and so a cadre of folks got together, a cadre of Black and non-Black women of color got together, and they said, stop no more. And in addition to saying that we need to actually specifically attack and undo white supremacy for us to get free, there was a call of accountability, a call of justice, that the movement for abortion rights, this rhetoric of choice, completely disregarded the very real material oppressions of Black and non-Black people of color. Not just women, not just men, not just trans people and non-binary folks that were out there, but just like whole and mass, right? There is no choice under capitalism. It's all violent coercion. Everything is terrible. And even though the conveners for the conveners of reproductive justice didn't go quite that far. They're not an anarchist like me. I'm an anarchist. Are there any anarchists in the room? Woo! Yeah! We're coming for all of y'all. No, I'm trying. Even though they didn't go that far, reproductive justice is very much grounded in a human rights framework which sees the state as a grantor of rights, and those rights have to be negotiated. But the reason why it is radical, the reason why, or that it seeks to be revolutionary, if not radical, and that's a little tiny baby critique, is that it was calling on all of us to think about the whole complete well-being of Black and non-Black women and girls. And that didn't just mean the organs that gestate and receive, that make people, but our emotional, our spiritual, our intellectual, our whole beings. And not just us as individuals, but our families, our communities, and, across our networks. And so there were a lot of things that were just very pearl-clutching to that. Words like uppity were used. People fainted. It was hilarious. This was in 1996, which is also hilarious. I'm a historian by trade, and so sometimes when you think, well, that was the late 20th century. No one was even alive then. But that there was a real charge being made. And also in that charge, there was a call in that all of us needed to hold ourselves accountable, and that we needed to take a real hard look at what it means to do liberation work, and that it doesn't occur piecemeal, and that it doesn't occur solely, for example, reproductive health is about service delivery, reproductive rights is about legislative and policy strategy. Reproductive justice is really a call to organize. It's to organize people and to take apart the structures that are oppressing them through their reproductive and their sexuality and their gender. And so, big project. As I always joke at work, we're totally done. I have a white coworker, and every time we high five, it's like, we solved racism, we did it. Everything was solved when Obama was elected, so there's no racism, there's no sexism, everything's fine. I don't know why I'm here. But if anything, I would argue, like you were saying, Liz, the way that reproductive justice has been taken as a catch-all, sometimes, from a place of true ignorance, people just don't know. And then also with more of a sinister bent. There are some people out there that say, we just want to protect women. We can't have certain kinds of people talking at our libraries because it will harm the children and we can't have this, that, and the third thing. And so there has been the utilization of reproductive justice to cloak people from critique, from calling them out, from dragging them into the street or into the guillotine. And that's why it's so important to remind people it is, as most revolutionary frameworks, it's something that we always have to be working towards. There's not, I mean, besides liberation for all people forever, there's not a point where we're like, well, we've reproductive justice did, so.
Yeah.
Done. And at WMF, mostly since I got here because I am a rabid anarchist, we've been actually sort of asking people to step it up a notch. We've decided that we want to come at a program of like full abortion liberation. What would it mean for the largest abortion fund, for any abortion fund, to say that we unequivocally believe that every person has the right to have as many abortions as they want for whatever reason, through whatever method, at any time? Like, how do we get to that place? What is required of us as an organization that has a past? I think when WMF first started, the money we gave to people were loans, and they had to pay them back. And eventually people realized that poor people were not paying back their loans. And we can sit back and we think, oh, that was such a terrible idea. But you know, you learn, you grow.
Just in theory, it's not great. Like, what are you going to do?
What do we do? But again, we learn, we grow. Now we're not doing that. But that not only grappling with what the history of WMF is and should be and what we need to be as an organization. You know, we have now, for the first time ever, our board and our staff and our volunteer corps, the Philadelphia Reproductive Freedom Collective, that's a shout out, is now majority not white. I'd like to say we were majority black, but we're not there yet. Nobody's perfect. And that's important. So it's not just for our organization when we think about how are we actually centering and upholding the leadership of those most impacted. And again, for WMF, those are people who are living at the intersection of deep poverty and needing abortion care. But what does it mean for us to get to this place as an organization to make that possible? Anyone can have whatever abortion they want for whatever reason, and we truly love all of those reasons. And then also as a wider community, all of the neighborhoods of Philly, all of Philly, the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Earth, all the planets of the solar system. What does it mean for us to get everybody there? And I laugh and then I weep. My job is the second part. It's actually the first part too. So I'm organizing the organization with the help of senior staff and a few other committed board members. But also my work is to get everybody on board. And oftentimes it's not just the state that is against us. You know, we have people say things like, well, yeah, but people shouldn't have 2 abortions. Like, to my face, like in front of my salad. And I'm just like, I can have as many abortions as you want. Yeah. Well, not after 30 weeks. After 30, listen. And so it's oftentimes, and we joke about this all the time, we fight very rarely with the Catholic Church, even though they are the scourge of the earth and our biggest, worst enemies. We actually spend a lot of time gathering our own people. Because in the movement, there are people that are like, well, I mean, if you say anything against Israel, then we're not going to give you money. And you're like, so we actually all have to get free. So there are all these places and all these times where we're just trying to like gather everybody to the notion that the rising tide lifts all boats. And that if we are actually going to bring about this world where everybody can have all of the healthcare that they want without going into debt, the vast majority of people who call our helpline are deciding between food or rent to pay for their abortions. And again, and I have to remind people of this, most people, or some people, never have to pay out of pocket for healthcare. But I doubt that there are any people in this room that are like, yeah, I got $500, that's fine. And those are just the regular abortions. If you need to have an abortion in a hospital, those prices start at $3,000. We regularly do emergency care appeals that are in the tens of thousands, right? If you're going out of state for abortions, it goes all the way up there. And so like, when we talk about racial and economic justice as being a part of reproductive justice, it's important for us to like hold on to the idea that this is a part of a plan to actually get all of Philadelphia, all of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the entire Earth, all the planets beyond the solar system free, because we believe that that is the end goal. We both want all of the abortions for everybody, but we realize that in order to get there, we actually have to get rid of white supremacy, we have to bring the government down, she said, casually. It's fine.
Well, I think that's great. And I think that valuing the decision and an individual and really being committed to the human right of every person to make those decisions. And so when we talk about that, it's like we don't value all pregnancy outcomes, right? And so to be able to say, whatever your choice is for your pregnancy outcome, we as a society wants to value that so that you are constantly on a path of being able to live your best life in a world that is rid of everything you just talked about.
Right, and I always tell people, it actually becomes very easy. People give purity tests a bad name, but when you genuinely feel and you do a values clarification and you say, you know what, actually, whatever reason you're having your abortion, I support you because I am committed to the idea that the pregnant person is the person that gets to decide. As I was doing an exercise with our volunteers the other day, they were like, well, what about, I was like, so those are methods questions. These are hypothetical methods questions. In this question about your values, do you believe in your heart of hearts, at the very core of your being, that the pregnant person gets to decide, full stop? Actually, everything becomes easy. Yeah. You support the pregnant person. They don't have to justify to you or anybody else what their decisions are because you believe in your heart and not for any qualified terms. Not if you know they're a cis woman and they're married and they make enough money or they really. None of those reasons are all they distract us from at the heart of the issue is if you're really about this liberation work, if you believe you are the only person that gets to decide. Someone was screaming and they're like, how do you sleep at night? I used to work at the Planned Parenthood in Boston, which some of you guys might know. So that's the place where they needed to invent the buffer zone law. Do you guys know what the buffer zone law is? Do they have it in New York?
Buffer zones?
Yeah.
I think the sidewalks are so small. The Planned Parenthood gets protesters all the time, and I don't really think that there is much of a buffer zone there.
Yeah.
But it's creating a legal space for the protesters to be away from the clinic.
So yeah, shit is wild in Massachusetts. We don't have it in Pennsylvania for a variety of reasons. But yeah, I used to work at that clinic, and people would just scream and scream and scream. How do you sleep at night? I sleep very well. Because I know for a fact, every abortion I've had has changed my life. It has made my life. I'm so happy. I'm so tall. And also, over the last 20 years of doing this work, I can't even tell you the amount of times that I have both seen love and been loved by people who have had abortions and helped people get abortions. Yeah. They're some of the most amazing folks in the entire world. And it's the idea that we wouldn't want that for people that is truly the worst thing in the world. And so I low-key, high-key love it. We joke about being abortioneers. Sometimes it's hard to find a good word for people who love abortion. Because abortionist has a really negative connotation.
Abortionista.
Abortioneers, a comrade from Africa brought that back. I think they were saying it in Botswana. I was like, oh, that's far. They're never going to find out we're using that, so we're just going to take it. So I came up with that. And so, yeah, but also reinvigorating the point that this is righteous, powerful, loving work. And
okay, we have to wrap, but I have two questions. No, that's okay. 2 questions for you. One is the takeaway for folks who are hearing some stuff for the first time, are going to be trying to break down just some of the stigmatizing language that they may have used in their life, like easy stuff so that they don't necessarily have to get into a debate, but can be like start a conversation as they're learning more. Give them a couple of tips.
Yeah, so I would say, there's a whole bucket. So I would say the first thing, if you actually want to learn how to both listen and talk to people about abortions, the National Network of Abortion Funds, NNAF, has a really great resource. It's called Heart-to-Heart Conversations. It is literally flashcards and a bunch of values clarification ideas that anybody can utilize at any time. We train our volunteers to do it at the fucking bus stop. We train them to do it all the time. And the objective of that is to not only be able to identify on a continuum where people are with respect to abortion, but at every point in that continuum, being able to engage with them in a way that moves them towards abortion liberation. And I always say, using those as a basis, you become a soft place to land, right? Most people, because of stigma, don't know anything about abortion. Guttmacher Institute, which is one of the best things in the entire world, their whole job is to do research about reproductive rights, justice, and health. And they have a bunch of resources about abortion. And so if you're somebody who doesn't know anything about abortion and someone's like, well, what about the fetal heartbeat? You slap that person in the face, you pick up your phone, no, just kidding.
That sounds like a soft place to land.
You pick up
My
your phone, you choke them to death with your bare hands. No, you pick up your phone and you become somebody who knows enough about abortion so that when people are talking to you about abortion, not just people who are against it, but particularly people who are thinking about it, who have had abortions, 1 in 4 people by the time, 1 in 4 women, and I say people assigned female at birth, have had abortions by the time they're 45. There were nearly 1 million abortions in 2007. And as NNAF says, everybody loves somebody who's had an abortion. So the chances are that in your life, there are people who have had this procedure and they want to talk to you about it. And if that's not you, if you are not that person who has had an abortion, you can use heart-to-heart conversations, Gumatka Institute, iPass. Inroads is another fantastic organization that works specifically about stigma, how we understand it, and how we become a soft place to land. Again, not so much about confronting opposition, because those people can be put in a wood chipper very easily.
Yeah.
But being able to help and support people emotionally, intellectually, practically, and financially with their decisions, and supporting them after the fact. I'm a really big fan of that. Oftentimes when you're poor and you want an abortion, everybody tells you that you're careless, that you're lazy, that you don't make good choices. But the reality of the situation is that's never true. And so I would say first things first, figure out where you are about abortion, figure out if you love it 100%. If you're not there, get fucking there. And once you're there, be that soft place to land. Be that person that not only can be talked to about abortion, but also knows where your abortion clinics are, knows what your abortion fund is. And NAF will also tell you where that is. New York has a fantastic abortion fund. It's a sibling fund of Women's Medical Fund. They're homies. We love them. They're fantastic. They do beautiful work. Almost every state has one. Some states, like Texas, have 8. Know where your abortion funds are. Know where people can get pregnancy counseling and abortion care. And be that person. As I always like to say, be the abortion fund you wish to see in the world.
That is great.
Yeah.
NNAF.org.
They're fantastic.
So that is the website, which will lead you to everything else that you just said. And then any last thoughts about where people can find you and how they can help the Women's Medical Fund?
So we are at womensmedicalfund.org. I'm on the website. I welcome people contacting me. One of the other things that we always suggest is that not only should people be the abortion fund that they wish to see in the world, but plug into a grassroots organizing group that is in your area. If you don't know one, be about the business of finding one.
That would be us.
These folks, if like me, you live in Philadelphia, come by Women's Medical Fund. That's the other piece of it, right? We want to be able to make it so that people can access their abortions now, but we also need to be organizing ourselves and each other so that everyone can access abortions in the future. And so those two pieces, both figuring out how people can get abortions and how we're all going to organize to overthrow the government, get people abortions, is the other part. So if you don't know where people are organizing for abortion access, find out. And NNAF is also another great place. And of course, Abortion Access Front, or Women's Medical Fund, we're out here.
Yeah, so and so for those of you who don't know, if you sign up for our mailing list, the one thing that we specialize in is we are literally on the road almost 4 months a year total. We are visiting Alabama, Georgia, Texas, you name it. We are there working with the clinics and bringing audiences together with providers so that folks can know what to do. And so if you hear a story about something that freaks you out that happened in Alabama or Mississippi or Texas or Ohio or Missouri, if you write us and you're on our mailing list, we'll say, here's where you can affect the most change in Ohio right now. It's not some weird blanket like, give to this larger national organization. It's this small place in Columbus, Ohio is where you need to go to fight the fight. And that's a really helpful thing to know, because sometimes you just feel lost in all the garbage if you even hear about the garbage at all. So, and last thing I'm going to say is, if you want to go down to DC to stand in front of the Supreme Court with a whole bunch of really badasses on the case that I told you about, we have a bus. You can ride on it for free. If you want to come on our bus on March 4th, we're leaving at 2 o'clock in the morning. On the 3rd, we're going to be there in the morning, and then we're leaving again at noon, and you'll be there supporting these clinics out of Louisiana and the providers who are doing this and being a voice in a show, because a jillion anti-abortion vigilantes are going to be there being nightmarish. And so if you want to come, we got you on the bus. We'll give you snacks. We'll put you on the bus for free. We'll get you home. It'll be fun. So sign up out there if you want to. Do it. Seneca, thank you.
No, thank you
Seneca
very
Joyner,
much.
everybody. Thank you all for staying. You guys are amazing. Go out to the table, learn about Seneca's organization. learn about us, do all the things. We'll see you. You're fantastic. Have a great night. We'll see you next month. We have a great show. Dulce Sloan will be here. There's a bunch of really other cool people. Ciao for now. Bye.
Bye.